Hi, this is Jimmy, who is the author of Understanding AP World History Modern. For today's video, I'd like to talk a little bit about this book, my own book, Understanding AP World History Modern, along with some of the ideas that I've been thinking about for quite some time that will be helping you guys to get a good score, not just from the main exam, but also from your AP World History course at school. So why don't we start from the cover of this book? So the cover of this book includes the photo of the statue of Louis XIV, was a very, very important figure in world history. Louis XIV was a very powerful king in France during the early modern ages, and he therefore impacted greatly upon the course of world history. And artistically, this statue is in front of the Louvre Museum, so a lot of artists are emphasizing the significance of this statue. That's the reason why I have decided to make this photo as part of the cover for this textbook. And if we go to the very first part of the textbook, there is this title for the first unit of this textbook, Dawn of Connections. So the first thing I'd like to emphasize is the organization of this book's content review. So I know that there are a lot of different textbooks on the AP World History course out there. A lot of different authors have come up with a lot of different great textbooks, but the problem with many of those textbooks is that oftentimes the explanation is just too wordy and unorganized. So there are literally hundreds of paragraphs about a lot of different random things. So those who are not really familiar with all these historical facts will never be able to thoroughly and efficiently understand those ideas just by reading those a lot of different wordy and sometimes pedantic paragraphs. So I have decided to systematically organize the explanation that's part of this textbook. So I have decided to divide the whole explanation into 10 different units. And each unit is including 10 different topics. The first topic of the first unit is this: Silk Roads, the threats of civilization. And this is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of a more important story. The explanation for each topic is not really long. Still, I have decided to divide the explanation for each topic into 3 different parts so that you guys can understand each paragraph more efficiently. The context, the process, and lastly, the consequence. So if you guys read the paragraph that's titled as the context, you will be able to understand the historical context, the very beginning of this particular event that's part of this topic. And if you move on to the paragraph that's titled as the process, then you will be able to understand the specific details behind this topic. And then if you move on to the third paragraph that's titled as the consequence, then you will be able to understand the connection between this topic, this event, and the next topic. And I'd like to emphasize the fact that the consequence is probably the most important part out of these 3 paragraphs, because the connection between 2 different events is absolutely important. So, well, let's just face it. You need to memorize some things, right, to get a good score from the AP World History exam. There's no other way to get a good score from the AP History course, because history is about knowing about a lot of different facts, events, figures, wars, and treaties. But there is one way to memorize those things more efficiently within a shorter period of time. That is to understand the connection between two different events. So you guys need to literally connect the dots. If you guys don't try to connect the dots and don't try to understand the bigger picture, then you guys will never be able to memorize where each dot is placed, right? So the paragraph that's titled as the consequence is absolutely important. So for example, you can memorize some facts about the Renaissance, but to understand the facts about both the Renaissance as well as the scientific revolution, you guys need to understand the fact that the Renaissance inspired the scientific revolution in Europe. And the best way to understand the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment is to understand that the scientific revolution, and specifically the physical findings of Sir Isaac Newton, has inspired the beginning of the Enlightenment in Europe. So you're literally connecting the dots like this. So you're never going to be wanting to memorize about all these events separately. And I'm not really saying that it's okay. I'm saying that it's not okay. So it's not okay to learn about those events separately. It's not just inefficient, but also, in most cases, inaccurate. You need to work on two different full essays during the May exam. You need to work on both the long essay question as well as the document-based question. And to appropriately work on those two essays, you literally need to understand the connection among a lot of different events. And many of the multiple choice questions are also asking you about the connection between two different quite distant events. So the paragraph that's titled as the consequence is absolutely important. And after a few topics, you will be able to see the essay that's titled as the special report. So this book includes 30 different special reports, meaning that there are 30 different very informative essays about 30 different highly specific topics that are closely related to the AP World History Modern course. So here's the thing. The explanation about each topic is, of course, mentioning that there was a guy named Genghis Khan who has created the vast Mongol Empire that eventually contributed greatly to the globalization of a lot of different countries during the 13th and the 14th centuries. But some students might want to know more about the life of Genghis Khan. Some other students might be required to know more about Genghis Khan because their school teachers are forcing them to work on some projects, right? To work on some assignments about Genghis Khan and his sons and grandsons. Then you can always refer to this special report. So this special report is exclusively about the personal life of Genghis Khan as well as his leadership style. So these kinds of special reports will certainly help you to go beyond the very basic boundary of the AP World History Modern course. And I mean, some of the advanced questions that appear on the May exam will actually be asking you about something that appears on the special report. So unless you really don't have a lot of time, I strongly urge you to read the special reports along with the explanations for each topic. So this is it for the content review. And if we move on to the second part of the textbook, there are 8 different practice tests that I have carefully designed just for this textbook. So I have spent, of course, a lot of time on the content review section, but I have spent even more time on creating 440 questions for this part. So please be solving these questions very, very carefully. So here it goes. there are 8 different practice tests that includes 55 questions respectively. So 55 times 8 will be 440, right? So there are 440 very, very good multiple choice questions. And the reason why these questions are good is not really because these questions are hard. It's not really because these questions are very easy. It's just because these questions really do resemble actual exam questions. So these questions really make this textbook to be way better than other textbooks, I should say. So I have used a lot of different famous textbooks as I have been teaching AP World History for a very long period of time. And I mean, I do love all those books, but the problem with those books was that in many cases the practice questions were either too hard or too easy. In many cases, the practice questions that are part of those textbooks do not really resemble the actual exam questions. And this is a real problem because, of course, in the case of the free response questions, you don't really need to buy a separate textbook because all you need to do is to have access to the official College Board website, to download literally tens of different free response questions as well as their answers. So the College Board is generously releasing the free response questions, the short answer questions, the long essay questions, as well as the document-based questions every time each May exam ends. But the College Board never releases the multiple choice questions. I personally think that this is a really, really bad idea because it really, really makes the preparation for the exam very, very hard. But this is not something that I can do because I'm not really related to the College Boards, right? So this is basically the College Board's policy, and we need to follow that. So the bottom line here is that whenever you want to buy the textbook that's unrelated to the College Board, you definitely want to buy the textbook that includes a lot of different quality multiple choice questions. And I can proudly say that all these questions are very, very similar to the actual exam questions. So I have been specifically analyzing some of the key characteristics of actual exam multiple choice questions. The first characteristic is that the excerpts are very good, I should say. So if you just read the excerpts, you will literally be able to learn a lot of different things about history. So the excerpts are oftentimes very famous, and the excerpts are neither too short nor too long. So I have tried my best to imitate the style of the excerpt that actually appears on the real exams. And the second characteristic that I figured out from my teaching experience was that each question asks students not just about history, but also about the excerpt, because the excerpt is about history. So you're going to be solving a lot of different SAT reading questions, but those reading questions will not really ask you about historical background information, because those questions are supposed to make students to show their reading skills, right? Their ability to appropriately analyze each passage. But these questions are for the AP World History modern exam. So these questions will definitely ask you about the, bunch of backgrounds information with respect to a lot of different countries' history. That's for sure. But at the same time, you guys should be able to appropriately and quickly analyze the historical excerpts. As you guys know, in many cases, those historical excerpts are very complicated because they're written by a lot of smart people could have unfortunately died several hundred years ago, right? So it's going to be really hard to appropriately understand the historical excerpts. And these 440 questions include a lot of different questions about how to appropriately analyze the excerpts. So if you guys solve these questions over and over and over again and check the answers and make sure that you understand the entirety of the practice test, then you guys will be able to get a 5. I can guarantee that, because I mean, the real exam only includes 55 multiple choice questions, and we're solving 440 questions over and over and over again. So there's no way that the exam will be really talking about the things that are completely foreign to what this textbook is saying, right? I mean, statistically speaking, we're talking about probability, right? We are talking about science every time. And again, we are talking about science in this context as well. So that's the thing I want to emphasize. And at the end of the 8 different practice tests, there are going to be the answers for those test questions, of course. So, I mean, I know that some textbooks are not even including the answers for their practice tests. I also know that some textbooks are generously including the explanation for each of the question and its answer. And I have decided to choose the third way. I have decided to add the answers for each practice test, but I have not decided to add the explanation for each practiced test. The reason is simple. I have created the separate subreddit just for this textbook. And if you guys solve the questions and check the answers, and if you guys still have some doubts about some of the questions, then you guys can always have access to the subreddit, be part of it, and ask me any questions. I will be there always. So if you guys are unsure about some questions, just let me know. Then I will be gratefully answering for all of your questions. Yeah, so this is pretty much the end of today's video. Thank you very much for watching this not too short video. I will come up with the next video about my second textbook about the AP United States History course. So please watch that as well if you guys are interested in the AP US History course. And see you on the next video. Thank you.